What's up, brand builders? Stephen Hurahan here on the Brand Master podcast. And in this episode, I'm delighted to have the wonderful Melinda Livsey on as a guest. Now, Melinda comes with a very high profile. She is the co-host of the Futur alongside the one and only Chris Do. She runs her own agency in the form of Marks and Maker, and she's probably the most famous case study of a designer transitioning into a brand strategist role. And that is a transition that's very close to the hearts of a lot of our listeners and viewers. So I'm delighted to have Melinda on today to tap into her wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And we're going to be talking about selling strategy as a standalone service, marketing tactics, and brand strategist skill sets. Welcome to the Brand Master podcast, a show specialized in helping branding professionals and entrepreneurs to build brands using strategy, psychology, and creative thinking. Okay, so I've got Melinda on the show. Welcome everybody to the Brand Master podcast. You probably know who Melinda Livsey is. If you don't, you've probably been living under a rock. But Melinda, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show. I've got a list of questions here lined up. I'm sure you'll be able to give our listeners tons of value.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited for today.
Yeah, no problem. So look, I'm not going to go down the road of, tell me about Chris Do and tell me, because, you've been on pretty much every podcast that exists at this stage talking about your journey there. So I'd rather kind of, trying to pull, really, really valuable pieces of information from you rather than kind of go, because, most people at this stage know who you are and where you've come from. For those who don't, Melinda, like a lot of us, went down the usual road of designer, and then out of nowhere she was taken under the wing of Mr. Chris Do, and that was the start of your transition into brand strategy. And I guess I think the thing that kind of resonates with me with a few things that you've said so far was this idea that you knew that there was something beyond. And I think for me, the analogy that I always use is from the Matrix. Neo kind of knew that there was something. He was always asked, what is that? And there was something beyond. And that's how it was for me anyway. Is that how it was for you? Was that natural curiosity there before Chris took you under his wing and kind of showed you the path? Morpheus?
Yes. Oh, most definitely. And I love how you explained that too. I knew there was something else, but I did not know the questions to ask. And I didn't know how to get to that place. And I honestly didn't even know what that other place was. I just knew that it wasn't what I was currently doing. And at that time, right before I met Chris, I had dabbled, unbeknownst to me, I dabbled in brand strategy. And I was working with a client who hired me for brand identity. And during the project, I was asking myself, how do I even know if this is going to connect with the audience? Who is the audience? And who are they looking at? And how do I get into their world? And so I was starting to think about those things that we go really deep into in brand strategy. And I was thinking about it before I met Chris, but I didn't even know that that's what it was, or that's what I was going towards. So when I first met him, I showed him my document and I was like, I think I'm doing it already. I think, but I don't know. And again, there were so many questions I didn't even know to ask. But like you said, there was this other world. There was something else. I knew there was more to this than I was taught in school or taught even in my in-house job or other agencies I was at. But I didn't even know how to articulate it. I just knew that there was a disconnect between what I was doing as a designer and a brand identity designer and what I see is out there and the possibilities that are out there.
Yeah. And I think, for me, and by the sounds of it, that was for you as well. It was kind of like, and I think it still very much exists today. There's a light being shined on it a lot more than there used to be. But it seems like there was just this blind spot that wasn't being addressed by the universities and the degrees that were out there for the traditional road of branding. It wasn't being addressed by, there weren't enough thought leaders out there addressing it. And I think it's only now that people's attention are turning towards it, and you have all of these other influencers that are not in the necessarily the branding space, like entrepreneurial influencers, the likes of Gary Vaynerchuk, talking now about the importance of branding and, you know, being a bit strategic about that. And I think that has also raised the appetite from the client side of things, that they're starting to now know that, okay, I need a brand, but I know that a brand is not just a logo. So where do I go to? Is that also what you've seen from clients, that there is this kind of openness to explore beyond a brand just being a logo?
Definitely. I've noticed that with clients, they have heard possibly that a brand is more than a logo, and they understand the concept that they want to create an emotional connection between their business and who they're serving. And they themselves understand it, because when you just ask them, what's your favorite brand? What have you just recently told somebody about? What product or service do you love because of what they stand for, because of the product, because how it's presented to you, because of how they talk to you? And they can understand it on that level because they themselves have been on the receiving end of a brand that they absolutely adore and they love. And once you get them into that headspace and ask them questions to start eliciting those emotions, then they go, oh, my business can be like that too. My business can be living in the hearts and the minds of the people I serve. And it's just not just a transaction, but it's this emotional connection they're going to have with my business.
Yeah. And you know, that's where I see the entire industry moving now, that into that space of kind of enlightenment, where we've come from this era of being in this this phase where everybody's obsessed with a brand identity and a look and feel, and focusing all their efforts on that, now into a phase where people are asking deeper questions and asking, okay, well, look, my audience is a person, and I need to connect with them through more than just visuals. And that's where the questions are coming from. Why do you think we've been in this phase now for so long, where there's been such a focus on the visuals without really considering the other aspects? Have you ever thought about that, like in terms of what the disconnect is, where the misinformation is?
That's a good question. I know for me personally, it happened in school. And I don't know if that would be for everyone, but at least where I went to school, design was in the art department and marketing was in, I believe, the communications department, business. So they were completely separate and they were seen as separate. So design was more about form and function, not necessarily how it connects or how it helps a business move the needle at all in the business. We didn't even talk about business whatsoever in our design classes, which I look back now and I'm like, that is wild, because we're getting hired by businesses to do things for the business to help connect to who they're serving. We're not talking about it at all. So I know that there was this, and we would look at the marketing department like, ooh, we don't want anything to do with them. And they would look at us the same way. So then there was this void between us and there was no bridge of the gap there. And then when I got into an in-house job, I noticed a similar thing happening where the design department, we were doing things for the marketing department, but we were still siloed off on our own thing with our own agendas too. Yeah. Because designers have much different agendas than marketing people do. And it's so interesting to see that. And so a classically trained designer is going to think differently and want to do things differently than, let's say, the marketing department that's requesting things from them. So I don't know where it started, but I just know in my own experience, there's always been a divide between the two.
And look, I tend to ponder these things when I'm in my own time and ask those kinds of questions. And I think something that I came up with was the advent of the digital transformation and it becoming so easy for businesses to get started. and our relationship, generally up until that point was that, we see a brand and, we recognize a brand as a logo. And that came with all of those entrepreneurs starting businesses. And, that kind of, and of course, at the same time, you had designers that were traditionally attached to an agency that did involve strategy now going out on their own and, having the skills to design a brand identity. And I think it was just like this perfect storm of conditions. But now I definitely see us moving into that new phase, and it's great to see the likes of Marty Newmeyer, out there pushing the envelope and really pushing to get brand managers and brand strategists into the boardroom, because that's when I believe that you'll see the silos that you were talking about break down, because those conversations are happening at a higher level. And then, that breaks down those barriers of communication. So, you're going to get the bigger businesses doing what we're trying to do at the moment, which is to build the brand cohesively. So that's kind of my 2 cents on where that has come from. But in terms of your experience in learning, so again, we didn't learn the traditional way in terms of brand strategy, because that path wasn't there. I when my curiosity started to build, it was all about books, because that's where I was getting information that was useful, as opposed to articles that weren't really getting you much. You had Chris take you under his wing. What was that learning process like for you?
Yeah. For Chris, when he started coaching me and I had so many issues with my own brand identity design business, trying to get higher paying clients and projects, he first was helping me change my mindset, because that was the first thing that needed to change. Was I had one foot in, one foot out of being a consultant for my clients and being an order taker, and just doing what they ask of me and creating what they ask, and that's it, and not really thinking and not using my creative problem solving skills. So he was helping me get out of that mindset and actually be there to help my client and be the consultant and ask them good questions. So that was part of it. That was a big part of it, of our coaching together. And then he introduced me to their strategy kit, which is called Core. And I learned that on my own with some of the pro group members that were part of his community. And so we learned it together. There were a lot of us who had clients we were testing it out on, and then we would come back together, show what we learned, what worked, what didn't work. Then we would change our documents per each other's revisions and updates, and then we'd go out and try it again with our clients, come back to the group and share again. And so I worked a lot with them. And in the meantime, I was then working with Chris, and he was coaching me through how, again, do you be that consultant to the client? How do you raise your rates? How do you price things? And so he was helping me more on the business, sales, marketing side of my business. And then I was learning the nitty gritty of the brand strategy and testing it out on my own and with the community too.
Yeah. So the stuff that we're seeing on the Future with Chris in terms of, getting into those details, you had that more on a one-on-one session, and then you were taking that information and you were putting into practice with, first the group and then the clients. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So in terms of the application then of that strategy, now I know that you've gone on to a place now where you've left design behind, and you've moved into this new consultancy world. And I know a lot of designers, they some like that idea, some don't. Some are in love with design and they want to design all day, every day. And some want to be a hybrid. Some want to hold on to the design and, to push forward with the strategy and the consulting, so that they're really part of the whole process. What skills did you take from your design world into the consultancy world, and what skills did you have to add to what you already had?
It's a fantastic question. The thing that got me into design in the first place was the fact that I could use my creative problem solving skills in the job. That was the main reason. And it was a bonus that it was aesthetics that I could work on, and visuals and design and thinking through the language of visuals. So then when I got into brand strategy, I realized, oh, this is where I can use all of that creative problem solving skills. And it's not just about the visuals. Now it does influence the visuals, it influences the marketing, it influences messaging. And I was able to do so much more with my creative problem solving skills than I could at that point with design. It was more narrow with design, where when I started doing brand strategy, I realized my love for messaging. I never would have said that. If you would have asked me this when I started my design career, I'd be like, don't give me any words. Give me the content completely done. I don't want to handle anything like content or messaging or anything like that. And now I love it. I love that. And so that is something that I added when I started brand strategy, is doing the messaging. But then not only that, I could bring in all my love for psychology and how people interact with relationships. Because when I think about it, a brand, it's similar to, a brand is like a person. And then their ideal customer that I call a super fan is also another person. And we are similar to matchmakers. So it's like we're creating a match, we're matchmaking the two together. And so my love for psychology too came into play. And so those were a couple things. I think also just practicing empathy, listening to my client, drawing out insights from them and learning about business. All of those things that I already loved previously, like business, I was able to apply in brand strategy and get to know it more and satisfy that curiosity that I had about business too, that I didn't always touch upon when I was a designer.
Yeah. And you've really covered a few things just in a few short sentences in terms of what strategy really means to me. And the psychology part of it, is just, it's something that just generally we're fascinated about as people, because we all want to find meaning in what we do, in what we believe, where we're going. And, when you think about it, our job as brand builders is to connect a business with a human. And, the old adage goes that, a brand is a set of perceptions that live in the mind. And at the end of the day, if that's what a brand is, then your job as a brand builder is to shape those perceptions. So you really need to step back and take a human approach to the brands that you're building to understand this person, not just from a demographics and a psychographics point of view, but from a human point of view, what their lives are like, what they're going through, and, what challenges they have, and, what it is that they're trying to achieve, and how all of that makes them feel. And really, when you look at brand building from that point of view, and you compare that to possibly what we were doing before with brand design, you realize how much more is involved, and how much more angles there are to shape those perceptions. And psychology, just having a basic understanding of psychology is hugely advantageous to any kind of brand builder, because that's at the end of the day what it's all about. It's really all about that understanding and shaping those perceptions. How did you develop a curiosity for psychology? You said it was a passion. Was it already a passion before you got into brand strategy, and then did you take that on? What was the relationship there?
Yeah, I had already been interested in it, especially in college and just reading about it. And so I naturally was drawn towards it. And then once I learned about brand strategy, I realized, oh man, all of the things I already was interested in, business, psychology, and the visuals, and now messaging, all came together in brand strategy. So yeah, it took all of my previous passions and then.
And do you think that as well has also played into your relationships with your clients as well? Because one of the big things for me was when I really came across the idea of empathy. Not that I was ever, I didn't have any empathy before, but when I realized the importance of it, and how that is used to connect through visuals, through messaging, through stories, and that resonance. When I learned that, how to apply that from a brand building point of view and a brand strategy point of view, I saw how that then impacted my relationship with my clients as well, in terms of the conversations that I had with them, trying to build those relationships. Did you find the same as well? Are you finding that, what you've learned through brand strategy, you're applying yourself in your own relationship building with your clients?
Oh, yes. It completely changed everything about my relationship with my clients. Previously, I had good clients. I loved my clients. The relationship with them, though, I felt like they didn't always trust me before I switched to brand strategy. I didn't feel like they felt understood by me either.
Mm-hmm.
And once I switched to brand strategy, I got clients saying, "You get us. You totally understand us." Because when I was doing design and I was showing them the design, and we did start with the strategic process at the beginning, and I said, "So what are your feelings towards this? What's your initial gut tell you?" And they go, "Oh, you understand us. You get us. We knew this would work." And I only showed them one option for the design, because all of the scaffolding, the thinking, the work, and the strategy we did previously led us to one place. Now, I did internally, I had many options, but when it came down to it, we did so much work and we knew who we were talking to, that there was only one option that made the most sense for that particular situation. And the client completely trusted me because they saw, I also show the thinking behind it too. So we do the workshop together, and then I do check-ins with them. I show them where my thinking is going, because I tell them if the end result is off, it's probably because the thinking is off somewhere along the line. So I try to make things as objective as possible. So I was starting to get way more objective feedback based off of what their goals are, who they're talking to, what we're trying to accomplish, versus, you know what, I don't like red, so make it blue. I wasn't getting that anymore when I was doing design with strategy. And they come to me for more of that consulting role now. They come to me to get clarity too. I think that's a big thing that I have clients coming to me going, I want to reach this huge goal and I don't know how to get there. And I need someone to ask me really good questions to untangle what's going on in my brain, and then make those connections to help me reach that goal and to help me connect with that ideal customer. And so now I'm solving much bigger problems than I previously was with design. And the relationship, it's just so much more fun for, I think, both ends, for both the client and myself.
Yeah, I think you touched on something there that was a real pain point for me myself, and part of the reason that that kind of pushed me towards strategy were those frustrating conversations about color and I'll know it when I see it. And one of the biggest kind of epiphanies for me was changing that conversation, taking control of that conversation. So, I want to take it back to when you got all of these tools from Chris, and not just Chris, from your own reading and from, the groups that you were with, and you decided, okay, strategies for me, let's go down that path. At that point, you are transitioning from a brand designer or designer to a brand strategist. What was that repositioning phase like for you, and how did you do that? What would you say would be the biggest thing that helped your clients to see you in a different light?
Oh, I had to first see myself in a different light. I had to see myself as the brand strategist, because otherwise, if I didn't believe it, why would anyone else buy into it if I myself wasn't convinced of it either? So what I did was, once I learned it, as I was learning it, I found 5 people who had businesses. Some were previous clients, some were friends, and one was a family member, that I asked, can I just practice this on you? I believe that it's going to have really good results for your business. I want to test it out, but I also want some case studies out of it as well. And they agreed to it. we were able to do that. And then from there, I started charging just a little bit. I charged $1,000 for the first one. When someone came to me for brand identity, I said, look, I will do some brand identity for you, but I just request that we start with this new service that I'm beginning to offer to my clients. Would you be open to us starting with that? And they're like, sure, let's do it. And then I would double the price every time after that. So I believe that starting out for me, I know some people are able to jump in the deep end, charge right away, and believe that they are the strategist that they learned themselves to be. And that's great, but that wasn't my path. I needed to get my toes, in the water first and make sure I'm comfortable and that, can I do this? Is this something I even want to do? And once I confirmed that and validated that it was indeed really helpful to the people I did it with, then I went from there.
Yeah. And I think there are, even those people who do just change their title and call themselves a brand strategist, they still, of course, they can tell themselves, but they're still going to have to deal with, what you were talking about before, which was, this voice in your head and this imposter syndrome of do I really know that? And I think you touched on something really, really valuable there for the listeners, which is how you went about transitioning. And that is, you focused on the goal, and the goal was experience and case studies. And you forgot about, price and charging, because there is this stigma, and it exists because of, businesses that take advantage. They offer internships for designers, and, or they offer to give you a job, so you can get experience. And we've all been kind of numbed by that a little bit. So we push back from free work. But I think you really approached it in the perfect way. And if I was talking to designers thinking about making that transition, that is also what I would say would be to forget about forget about dollars, forget about this idea that if you don't charge enough, they're not going to value. That's not your priority starting out. If you want experience, then it's all about what you need, and everything else becomes secondary. And something else that you said as well, which was, you were already kind of offering that. And that's something that I did as well. So I would be providing logos and brand identities, but then I would start to offer these services free of charge. And I just kept improving the offer. I kept improving the service without charging for it. And then there was a tipping point where I was like, okay, this has to go this way. So yeah, I think, and I'm sure you come across a lot of students yourself and designers that look to you as a role model for making that transition. And I suppose, it's okay to tell them that, your priority is your experience. Your priority is those case studies.
Definitely. I would 100% agree with that.
So look, in terms, I just want to jump into your actual processes and what you do in terms of the workshop and the discovery, because there are some blurry lines between the discovery and the workshop, and also the sales process as well. I actually look at those three as individuals, but depending on your strategy, they do cross over from time to time. So in terms of how you go about acquiring clients, do most of them come from your personal brand and the reputation that's out there and inquiries coming in, or do you actively market outside of your social profile or your personal brand?
Most of them have come from my personal brand. And since then, so from the past, I've been doing this 3 years now, most of them have come because of the personal brand that I've developed. However, at the beginning, I had no personal brand. And what I did was I would partner with people who were serving my audience in a different way. So a similar audience in a different way. So example, I connected with a person who ran a community of fashion designers. She was helping them get their start. And at that time, I was designing for lifestyle brands, a lot of fashion, accessory brands and all that. And I reached out to her and I said, hey, I would love to give value to your audience? Is there something that we could work out? We jumped on a call. She shared what her goals were. I shared what my goals were. Mine were to serve and land really more clients in the fashion industry. Her goal was to attract more people to her membership program by providing more content online. So we worked out that I did guest blogging for her. And we also worked out a deal where I would do free consultations. So I think it was 15 to 30-minute consultations for her members as a perk for being a part of her group. So then that was an instant way for me to get fed leads because of that relationship, because I was giving value to her community. And that's something I actually do today, that even though my services have changed as far as public facing, my services have changed and I'm teaching designers how to become strategists. I still use that same strategy today. Is I reach out to someone who serves a similar audience and I give value there and form the network there. And then beyond that, I have also connected with a lot of agencies. And now most of my client work that I've gotten, I would say most this year, have been from people in my network who either need brand strategy themselves, who are similar creatives or entrepreneurs, or they run an agency and they need a strategist to come in. And that I love, because then I don't have to deal with the risk, the sales process, the project management, all of the other stuff. And I could just focus on just brand strategy. And then I can also put my time into teaching too. And so that's worked out.
Yeah.
Beautifully.
Yeah. That's, and you've touched on something there, but that's a question for later on that I want to come back to. I don't want to lose the point that you made there. And that's for everyone listening, that, you know, we've all seen the free discovery calls on the website, and you know, we all know instinctively that is a sales call, that, you know, you call up for a discovery call and that turns into a sales call. But if you're able to package up what you offer and use that as a value add to somebody else's product, that is your shoe in. And not only are you able to get your foot in the door to customers who trust the person that you're aligned with, that then feeds you consistent leads. So it's, you know, what Melinda said there is hugely advantageous. And, you know, we're all looking for ways to get more clients. I think you need to read between the lines. You need to get a little bit creative, and you need to take the value that you have and package it up in a creative way. So I think that's a great tip for anyone listening. Make a note of that on your notepad if you're writing stuff down. In terms of your discovery now again, this is kind of still on the same topic here. I know that there are agencies out there that charge for a discovery session. They do, you know, quite a detailed discovery session, and then their workshop will be different. Then, you know, you have others who will offer a free discovery session, and that will act as a segue to the workshop. How does the discovery workshop relationship work for you?
Yeah, like you had said before, there is a lot of crossover there. And at the beginning, I was very confused on what was what and when to use discovery versus the word strategy. And I was very confused. So what I did was I just called it strategy. I have a strategy workshop, and I treat the sales call as more of the discovery of seeing what the real problem is. Is this a right fit? Do you really need this? And if not, can I refer you somewhere else that will help you or give you suggestions on what to do? So I'm treating the sales call more as that discovery call or that session. I know, like you said, agencies, some of them go into a very detailed discovery process. As I work with larger and larger clients, that actually might happen, and we might go that route. Because the agencies I'm working with, we are getting bigger leads that have much bigger problems that require a detailed discovery. So that may change as I work with bigger and bigger clients. But for now, it's just a sales call. And then if they end up hiring us, then we go into the strategy workshop.
Okay. So that sales call, then it would, you know, it's probably a little bit, they would need to come in with some kind of understanding of who you are, because from that point you're selling them into a full strategy, which includes the workshop. Is that right?
Yeah. That's correct.
So you're either a gun salesperson or you've got a decent reputation to kind of leverage off there, which it's probably somewhere in between. But in terms of that workshop, then once you go into that workshop, now I know a lot of agencies are all agencies are different, and I think everybody's looking for this, one way to do things, the best practices. But I always say to my students, the best practices of today are obsolete tomorrow. It's about being nimble, and as creatives, we have the advantage of being creative thinkers, and we can turn it into whatever we want it to be. And I know just from what I've heard you talk about, that yours can go, to up to 2 days, and involve, in-depth questions and exercises. Talk us through a little bit about your workshop environment.
Yeah, I loved what you said about what we use today might be obsolete tomorrow, and that our biggest asset is our creative thinking and problem solving abilities. And this is something I just talked to one of my students about, where she had a mindset shift because she was constantly looking for the process. She wants the process that's going to give her the best results. And she finally had this mindset shift that, oh wait, I'm selling them the way I think. I'm selling them my creative problem solving ability. And it finally resonated with her. And so that's what I go into the workshop remembering for myself, is that I've got a ton of tools in my toolbox, a ton of exercises, a lot of processes that I can bring out and use, but I don't have to use all of them. Depending on the problem, I start the workshop by defining what the problem is. And that's with everyone in the room. So there might be more than just the founder and the CEO there. There might be other people who are influential with the decision making. It might be the CFO, the chief marketing officer. There might be a lot of people in there that have a say, and they might all want something different out of this workshop. And I try to get everybody in alignment. What are we looking at? What is our common goal, so that we all don't come back later and say, wait, we didn't address what I need in this company and in the brand. So I get everyone in alignment, and we define the goal, we define the problem getting to the goal. And then I look in my toolbox and I think, okay, what things should I start with first? Now there's a general flow to my workshops where we do exercises with brand positioning, and brand attributes, and the backstory, and why they started the company, and who it's for. And we get into the super fan on if you could have one type of super fan, like the person that's going to buy everything that you put out, they are going to tell all of their friends about it. Who are they? What's their mindset like? What do they believe? What do they resonate with the most about your business? So we go over the brand, we go over that super fan, and at the very end, we have exercises for an action plan. And I typically will help them plan out the next 3 months in a rough schedule. So based off of what we went over, which might also include a customer journey. So I do tap into marketing, a very high level view of the entire relationship between the brand and the customer, so that you could break off portions of it and, let's say, give it to a social media manager or strategist. You could give it to a marketing strategist, someone who's doing packaging or website design or UX. So I go over the entire relationship. That's an umbrella view to then hand off to those different people. So we look at that and what needs to be created, and then I help them create that action plan at the end. Like, okay, now that we did this entire workshop, what do you guys need to implement from here on out in the next 3 months? Do I need to refer you to anybody to implement this? Are you going to be doing this in-house? Do you need extra consulting to make sure that we are all on track and that it's, brand correct going forward? What do we need to implement this? And then I will help them develop that and get in contact with the people that can help them if that's what they need.
Yeah. And look, I love what you said there about, kind of tapping into and touching on marketing, because, there are a lot of people who back away from brand strategy because they have this belief that they need to go the whole way. And I talk about the customer story sometimes, and the difference between the customer story and the customer journey. So the customer story being that, their lives exist before your brand comes into the equation. And when your brand comes into the equation, you take their hand and you hold their hand up to a certain point, and at some point you let their hand go. and you need to decide at what point you're going to let their hand go. And it doesn't mean that you need to hold their hand into Facebook ads or Google ads or anything like that. And that's the difference between a brand strategy that talks about the brand expression and the way the brand is going to be expressed in the market versus, you know, brand execution, which is your marketing tactics and things like that. So would you say you take them to a level where you've given them that expression and you've talked to them about their marketing options, and then, you know, it's up to them to go away and execute that?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
And I love your definition of that. I love that. I'm going to be making note of it for later.
Yeah, I think in analogy sometimes, and I think that's why I connect with a lot of people, because, you know, I picture it and it helps me understand that way as well. But yeah, so look, I mean, you're shining a light here on the process, and you're shining a light on some areas that people are in the dark about, because as we've discussed, you know, this isn't anywhere, this is not taught traditionally. So, and I wanted to go back to the point that you made earlier about when you do work with agencies. So it's great when you work with agencies because you have that whole support network and you get to focus on strategy. And that kind of taps into this idea that when you do provide brand strategy as a standalone product, then, you know, you are going to get you know, clients who are asking the question, well, are you not doing this? Are you not building the website? Are you not doing the logo? How do you deal with that, you know, that pushback, and what is your response in that situation?
Yeah, it's funny because the more I charge, the less pushback I get about that, because at least the clients that I've been getting understand that if they want something done well, they want to go to a specialist. And they don't want to go to a one-stop shop because they're afraid that, well, like, how can you be great at everything? So they're okay. I haven't had, that I can remember, I haven't had any client that has had an issue with that. I just am very upfront in our meeting, with the sales meeting, that they know where, like you had mentioned, that how long am I holding their hand for, and when will I be handing them off to someone else. And I will typically give them a heads up of the agencies that I do work with if they need to know at that time. Sometimes we don't know until we're done with the strategy session. But I'll let them know, hey, I have connections with a lot of agencies that do many different things, and depending on what your need is, I'll refer you to the one that I trust the most. And they typically will be very thankful for that, because it's very hard when you're not in that world. It's very hard to find an agency, a creative agency especially, that you know you can trust. And if you're going to work with someone that you like, and you trust them, then it's much better to get that referral. So,
and is that just set up as, you know, a value add to your customers, or do you have a relationship there that adds to your another income stream for you in terms of finder's fees? And, you know, how does then that affect your brand in terms of that alignment? Are you relying on them to do a great job, or else it looks bad on you? How do you see that, and how does that work for your business?
I do set up referral fees and referral bonuses, so ahead of time. And these are people that I've either worked with previously that I do trust, that they're going to handle my client very well. But I also have to realize that it's not my responsibility in the end what ends up happening between. That's a completely separate relationship. And I just know that all of my dealings with that agency have been stellar. They've been amazing. And so from my experience, these are the ones I would refer, the top ones I would refer. And then from there, that's their relationship. And I'm hands off unless I'm hired to continue working together in tandem with them or in collaboration with them. But I have to realize too, like, what is my responsibility in this? I'm going to give you the best people that I know of, that I've had great experiences with, but past that, I don't.
And that's something that I speak to my students about in terms of what your options are. How aligned do you want to be with a marketing agency so that they're part of your brand, or if you just push back and you know, just have that completely separate? That's a decision that, you know, strategists need to make. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I've probably got maybe one, maybe two questions left, but I just in terms of that handover process for you. So, you've gone through the hard work of the workshop. You've done all of those exercises with them. You then go away. What is that transition to again, going back to that analogy of letting their hand go? What does that look like, and what does the final kind of parting way look like? And your deliverables. What is that handover there?
Yeah, I work on a roadmap that I deliver to them at the very end of this engagement. They'll get a roadmap from me. It's a brand strategy roadmap that will include all of the insights we gathered about the brand, the positioning, who we're trying to connect to, and the action plan. So they will get a document from me, but in between them getting that final document and us doing the workshop, I will distill. There's a ton of information that comes out of the workshop, and sometimes I can make connections and get insights in the workshop. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. So I will take what I took as far as the notes I took in the workshop. I'll sit with it. I'll make the connections. I might do some research as far as their competitors that they mentioned, just getting deeper into the brand and understanding them. Then I start making connections between what was something they said, and then what about their super fan, and what things would spark and connect with them. I might also write messaging, potentially taglines if that's what's needed. So those things start to be written. Positioning statement is written. And then I will present it to the client maybe a week or two after our initial workshop and say, this is the direction I'm going in. It's just a check-in. It's just a discussion. It's not a big presentation or reveal. And I want to make sure that I'm headed in the right direction. And if they give me the green light, then I keep going. I might have one more check-in with them, and then I'll deliver the roadmap. So it takes roughly about 4 weeks from the time we have the workshop to the time that I deliver that last document.
Yeah. And, look, again, that's, at that point, that is the job that you have done, and that is where that concludes. And for designers listening, this is where we're normally pulled into the equation to go and execute on, those visuals and the logo and the website and things like that. But just for your own mind, just to realize that there is a world where strategy can exist as just the consultancy world. So if it's something that you want to work towards, it's definitely something that you can do. But look, Melinda, it's been an absolute pleasure. I just have one final question. What is the journey for you? What does that look like? Where are you going with what you're trying to build? Do you look that far into the future, or are you just happy to roll with the punches at the moment? Do you want to build an agency, or do you want to continue to build your own personal brand and use that as your vehicle?
Yeah, I want to continue building my personal brand, whether that ends up moving into a bigger thing beyond my personal brand, I don't know. But my vision so far is to keep doing client work on the side for agencies and with agencies, because I've been able to bring my students on as apprentices with me. And that has been so rewarding for me, but also for them too, where they can come in, actually work with a real client with me, and I can guide them through that process. And in that, I'm learning a ton too. Like we just discovered something a couple of weeks ago. I brought an apprentice with me and a client for a client project, and I discovered something new that I could update in my process in a way that I could go about things that was so much better than I did previously. So I realized that doing that, I can grow and learn so much more that will then feed the teaching side too. So that's what I'm looking at towards the future. And then I'm looking at also helping more agencies, not only doing the strategy for them, but teaching and training their teams and their design teams if that's the road that they want to take. So instead of just the individual solopreneur or solo designer, I want to help out more agencies. Awesome.
Well, I hope whatever direction that takes you, that we still continue to see your personal brand on the social channels, and we still get the value that you're putting out there, because the contribution for designers and stuff like that, it's not something that you had or that I had all those years ago when we came across brand strategy. So it's you're really putting some value out there. So again, I just wanted to thank you for being on the show and for adding such value.
We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more brand strategy techniques to level up your skills, make sure you check out BrandMasterAcademy.com. There's plenty of free resources and premium content for you to download and get you going. If you'd like to join our Facebook group full of like-minded brand strategists, all learning from each other, then find us by searching for the Brand Strategy Community, where you can find exclusive content for members as well. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give us an honest review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listened, and make sure you tune in for the next episode of the Brandmaster Podcast.